Hey there, friends. Buckle up, because you're about to hear a wild story that will have your jaw on the floor. So here's how it started. I'd been suspecting something fishy for a while. You know, my wife Jenna always had this look like she was hiding something, like when she'd jump at every text notification, or how she'd suddenly started working late but never talked about her day anymore. Weird, right? So I did what any guy in my shoes would do. I hired a a private investigator. Guy was like something out of a noir film, trench coat and all. When he first showed up, I half expected him to light up a cigarette and start talking about some dame in distress. Anyway, this let's call him Jack, he gets to work. He's got gadgets and gizmos. Felt like I was in a spy movie or something. He starts tailing Jenna, taking photos, the whole 9 yards. And me, I'm trying to act normal, keep the home fires burning. I'm making dinner, asking Jenna how her day was, all while wondering what Jack's finding out. So a couple of weeks go by and Jack calls me for a meeting. We sit down in this dingy diner, the kind where the coffee's too strong and the pie is too sweet. He slides this envelope across the table. Inside, there they are. Pictures of Jenna and our neighbor Rick. Rick of all people. The dude borrows my lawnmower every other Sunday. And there he is, cozying up to my wife at some fancy restaurant, laughing at some joke, looking like he doesn't have a care in the world. I felt like I'd been sucker punched. Jenna and we'd had our ups and downs, sure, but I never thought she'd do something like this. And with Rick, it was like a bad joke. Rick, who'd come over for barbecue and beers, who'd talk about his fantasy football team like it was the most important thing in the world. And here he was sneaking around with my wife. I remember driving home that night, the envelope sitting on the passenger seat like some toxic thing. I was angry, sure, but also just tired. Tired of the lies, the secrets, the not knowing. I parked in the driveway and sat there for a while, watching the lights in our house. Jenna was in there, probably watching some reality TV show or scrolling through her phone. And I'm sitting out here with proof that our life together's a sham. So I go inside trying to keep my face blank. Jenna's on the couch and she looks up, smiles, asks how my day was. And I just nod, say it was fine, nothing special. But inside, I'm a mess. I'm thinking about how I'm going to confront her, what I'm going to say. Do I throw the pictures in her face? Do I play it cool, gather more evidence? But for that night, I just went to bed, pretending everything was normal. I lay there staring at the ceiling, thinking about Jenna, about Rick, about this whole messed up situation. And I realized something. I needed a plan. I couldn't just confront Jenna, not yet. I needed to be smart about this, play the long game. So that's what I decided to do. I'd play the doting husband, keep my eyes and ears open, and figure out what my next move would be. Little did Jenna know I was onto her. And Rick, Mr. Friendly Neighbor? He was going to get his too. It was just a matter of time. One evening, Jenna sits me down all serious-like. She's got this rehearsed speech about open marriage and exploring ourselves. I'm just sitting there, poker-faced, trying to keep my cool. Inside, my mind's racing a mile a minute, thinking about those pies photos of her and Rick. But there I am, nodding like one of those bobblehead dolls, pretending to consider it. Jenna's going on about how we've grown apart, how we need to find ourselves again. You know, all that self-help mumbo-jumbo. She's talking about freedom and new experiences, but all I can hear is, I want to cheat without feeling guilty. The irony, right? There she was, pitching this idea to me, not knowing I already had the scorecard. I throw in a question here and there, playing the part of the intrigued husband. How does this work? Aren't you worried about our relationship? That sort of thing. And Jenna, bless her, she's got answers for everything, like she'd been planning this talk for weeks. Maybe she had. She talked about trust and honesty that almost made me laugh and how it could strengthen our relationship. The whole time I'm thinking about Rick, Mr. Nice Guy next door, who probably thought he was so clever. And Jenna, who was trying to paint this picture of a modern, open-minded relationship, when in reality she just wanted her cake and eat it too. So I tell her I need time to think about it. It's a big decision, I say, and she nods, looking relieved that I didn't shut it down right away. She's probably thinking she's played her cards right, got me considering this wild idea. Little did she know I was 2 steps ahead. That night I lay in bed, Jenna's fast asleep next to me, probably dreaming about her freedom. And I'm wide awake, thinking about my next move. This proposition of hers, it was a curveball, but I could work with it. It gave me an angle, a way to turn the tables. I start imagining different scenarios, how to use this to my advantage. Maybe I could agree to it, see how she reacts. Would she jump at the opportunity, run straight to Rick? Or would she backpedal, realizing I called her bluff? But it wasn't just about catching her in the act anymore. It was about understanding why. Why Jenna? Why Rick? Why this whole mess? I wanted answers, and I wasn't going to rest until I got them. So I drift off to sleep, a plan forming in my mind. Jenna wanted an open marriage? Well, she was going to get more than she bargained for. I was going to play the game but on my terms. And at the end of it, I'd be the one holding all the cards. Before we dive into the next chapter of this roller coaster story, I've got a small favor to ask. If you're enjoying this tale of love, adventure, and unexpected twists, how about showing some love? Hit that like button to let me know you're on board. It's a simple click for you, but it means the world to me. It's like a virtual high five telling me to keep the stories coming. And hey, why stop there? Go ahead and hit subscribe too. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming up next. Okay, so here's the twist. I'm not just gonna sit around feeling sorry for myself. No way. It's time for some good old-fashioned cunning. I start planning, scheming almost. I'm gonna outsmart Jenna at her own game. How, you ask? By becoming the most supportive husband on the planet. Yeah, you heard that right. I'm encouraging her idea, nodding along to her talks about freedom and self-discovery. All the while I'm collecting evidence, making notes. In my head it's like two can play this game. So I start this double life. By day, I'm Mr. Supportive, telling Jenna to explore, to find her happiness. By night, I'm like a detective in those old films, piecing together the puzzle. I'm checking bank statements for unusual expenses, noting down times she comes home late, even keeping track of her wardrobe choices. You'd be surprised what you can learn from a change in fashion sense. Meanwhile, I keep in touch with the pie Jack. He's getting more into the nitty-gritty now. We're not just talking about tailing Jenna anymore. We're digging into Rick's life too. Turns out, our friendly neighbor isn't as clean-cut as he seems. Jack's finding connections to some shady characters, the kind you don't want to owe money to. In the midst of all this, I'm doing some soul-searching. What do I want out of all this? Revenge? Closure? I don't even know anymore. But one thing's for sure, I'm not going down without a fight. Jenna thinks she's playing me, but she has no idea what's coming. Every conversation with Jenna, every encounter with Rick, it's all part of the plan now. I'm watching, waiting for the right moment to strike. And it's not just about catching Jenna in the act anymore. I want to understand the whole picture, see how deep this rabbit hole goes. The strategy's simple. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer. Jenna's my wife, but right now she's on the other side of the chessboard. And Rick, he's just a pawn in a much larger game. I start making subtle changes too. Working out more, dressing better, even picking up new hobbies. It's all part of the facade, this new version of me that's playing the game. Jenna notices, says I seem different, more alive. If only she knew why. As the days pass, the tension at home is like a ticking time bomb. We're both playing our parts, smiling and pretending. But the air's thick with unspoken truths. It's a psychological game, a battle of wits, and I'm determined to come out on top. So that's the strategy: be the supportive husband, gather the evidence, and wait for the perfect moment to turn the tables. Jenna thinks she's in control, but she's just a player in my game now. And I'm playing to win. Now, while Jenna's off with Rick, I'm not just sitting around twiddling my thumbs. No, I start my own adventure. Kinda like a side quest in a video game, you know? I meet people, make friends. It's a whole new world out there, and I'm diving in headfirst. Some of them are in similar situations, dealing with their own relationship dramas. Others are just interesting characters with stories that could fill a book. First up, there's Lisa. She's a bartender at this cozy little joint I stumbled upon. Man, she's got a sharp wit that can slice through the thickest tension. She has this way of talking about life, mixing humor and wisdom, that just makes you see things differently. We chat about everything and nothing, from the meaning of life to the best way to make a martini. She doesn't know my story, the whole Jenna and Rick saga, but her perspectives, they're like a breath of fresh air. Then there's Mark, met him at the gym of all places. The guy's built like a tank, but he's got a heart of gold. He's going through a rough patch himself, something about a messy divorce. We spot each other not just with the weights but in life too. He's got this positive energy, always pushing forward no matter what. Makes me think, maybe there's a light at the end of this tunnel I'm in. These new connections, they're giving me something I didn't realize I'd lost: a sense of belonging. A feeling that there's more to life than this drama I'm in. It's weird, you know, finding fragments of yourself in strangers. They're showing me different paths, different ways to live, and I'm soaking it all in. I start trying new things, exploring new hobbies. I pick up a guitar, start strumming some tunes. I'm no Hendrix, but hey, it's fun. I even join a local book club, can you believe it? Me discussing literature over coffee and pastries. It's a far cry from the late-night stakeouts and secret meetings. But here's the kicker: as I'm out there, living this parallel life, I'm learning, growing. These experiences, they're not just distractions, they're shaping me, changing the way I see things. I'm not just the guy whose wife's having an affair anymore. I'm more than that. I'm a friend, a musician in the making, a budding literary critic. And as I'm rediscovering myself, the situation at home becomes clearer. It's like stepping back from a painting and finally seeing the whole picture. Jenna's affair, it's just a part of a larger canvas. and I'm starting to figure out where I fit in it. So while Jenna's off with Rick living her double life, I'm on my own journey, finding new sides of myself, meeting people who light up different parts of my soul. It's an unexpected turn in my story, but hey, isn't that what makes life interesting? Things start getting weird, like really weird. Jenna's acting all jumpy like a cat on a hot tin roof. Every time her phone buzzes, she's on it faster than lightning, and her eyes dart around like she's expecting the FBI to bust down the door. And Rick, oh boy, he's looking over his shoulder like he's the star of a spy movie. I'm telling you, it's like watching a thriller unfold right in my own backyard. This is where it gets juicy. I'm hearing rumors, whispers around the neighborhood. People are talking about debts, shady deals, and not so legal activities. Looks like our Mr. Nice Guy neighbor isn't so nice after all. And my trusty pie, Jack? He's digging up more dirt than a backhoe at a construction site. It's not just affair stuff now, it's big time trouble. Turns out, Rick's into some seriously bad business, the kind that gets you more than just dirty looks. One day, Jack shows up with this folder, thick as a novel. He's got bank statements, photos, records. It's like Christmas came early for a snoob like me. We're talking illegal gambling, money laundering, you name it. Rick's mixed up in all sorts of shady stuff. And Jenna, she's right there with him, knee-deep in the mud. I start putting the pieces together and man, it's like a jigsaw puzzle from hell. Jenna's nervous behavior, those late-night whispers on the phone, it all makes sense now. She's not just cheating, she's tangled up in Rick's criminal spiderweb. Now, I'm not just dealing with a broken marriage. I'm in the middle of a crime drama. And let me tell you, it's not as glamorous as it sounds. I've got to tread carefully, play my cards right. One wrong move and I could end up in a world of trouble. But the plot thickens. I'm seeing changes in Jenna that I can't ignore. She's not the same woman I married, she's secretive, paranoid, and I can tell she's in over her head. Part of me wants to confront her, shake her out of this nightmare she's walked into. But the other part, the cold, calculating part, tells me to wait. Gather more evidence, build a case so airtight it could float in space. And Rick, he's getting more brazen, more careless. I see him around the neighborhood, throwing glances over his shoulder, meeting with shady-looking characters. It's like he's on a self-destruct button countdown, and I'm just waiting for the explosion. So there I am, stuck in the middle of this unraveling mess. My wife's tangled up in a criminal's web, and I'm sitting on a mountain of evidence. It's a dangerous game, but I'm in it to win it. I'm not just going to sit back and watch my life crumble. No, sir, I'm going to take control of the narrative, steer this ship through the storm. But let me tell you, it's not easy. Every day brings a new challenge, a new twist. It's like living in a suspense novel, except the stakes are real, and the ending's still unwritten. One night, it's like a switch flips in me. Enough is enough. I decide it's time to confront Jenna. No more games, no more waiting. It's like stepping into the ring for the final showdown. I wait for her to get home, sitting in the living room, every light off except for the lamp by my chair. It's all very cinematic, trust me. She walks in, sees me sitting there, and I can tell she knows something's up. Her smile fades faster than a shooting star. I don't waste any time. I lay it all out, the affair, Rick's shady dealings, everything I've learned from Jack and my own detective work. I watch her face go white as a ghost. It's like watching someone realize they've been caught in a trap they didn't even know was there. Jenna stammers, tries to explain, but it's all excuses, you know? The kind of stuff you'd expect in a situation like this. It's not what you think, you've got it all wrong, that sort of thing. But I'm calm, collected, like a judge delivering a verdict. I tell her I know everything. Man, the shock in her eyes, it's something else. It's a mix of fear, guilt, and something else I can't quite put my finger on. But here's the twist, I'm not just angry. I'm disappointed, profoundly disappointed. This was the woman I married, the woman I thought I knew. And here she is, a stranger in my own house. I ask her the questions that have been burning in my mind. Why Rick? Why lie? Why drag me through this hell? Her answers are a jumble of half-truths and tearful apologies. She talks about feeling lost, confused, about how things with Rick just happened. It's like listening to a script from a bad soap opera. I sit there, listening to her unravel the web of lies she's been weaving, and it's almost surreal. This confrontation, it's not just about anger or it's about closure. About ripping off the band-aid and facing the wound underneath. I needed to hear her say it. Needed to face the reality of our broken marriage head-on. And then I do something that surprises even me. I don't yell, don't throw accusations or insults. I simply tell her that I can't be part of this lie anymore. That the woman I loved, the woman I thought she was, would never have done something like this. It's a quiet moment, but it's powerful. The air is thick with unspoken words and shattered illusions. As the night wears on, we talk more about us, about what went wrong, where we go from here. It's not a pleasant conversation, but it's necessary. We're like two actors at the end of a play, taking off our masks and seeing each other for who we really are. So that's the confrontation. It's not a fiery explosion of drama and tears. It's a quiet implosion, a realization that sometimes things just can't go back to the way they were. And as I go to bed that night, I know that a chapter in my life is closing. A painful, messy chapter, but one that's taught me more about myself than I ever thought possible. So Rick's world starts crumbling like a cookie in a toddler's fist. The cops get involved, and it's not just a small-time thing. We're talking raids, flashing lights, the whole 9 yards. Turns out, Rick's been neck-deep in illegal activities, stuff that makes a soap opera plot look like a bedtime story. And Jenna, oh Jenna, she's terrified, realizing she's been playing house with a bona fide criminal. It's like watching a house of cards in a windstorm. 1 minute Rick's Mr. Respectable neighbor. Next thing you know, he's being handcuffed and shoved into a police car. The neighborhood's buzzing like a kicked hornet's nest. Everyone's got theories, but I'm sitting back, watching the show with a bucket of popcorn. Metaphorically speaking, of course. Now Jenna, she's in full panic mode. She comes to me all tears and apologies. It's like a dam's burst, and years of lies and deceit are flooding out. She's blubbering about not knowing the real Rick, how she got caught up in the thrill of it all. But here's the thing, I'm done. Totally, utterly done. I've seen a different life now. One where I'm not the punchline in someone else's joke. I tell Jenna it's over. No dramatic shouting matches, no throwing plates. Just a calm conversation, which almost makes it worse, right? I've had enough drama to last a lifetime. She's begging, promising change, but it's like the ship's already sunk, and she's offering me a bucket to bail water. The next few days are a blur of moving boxes and legal papers. It's weird how quickly a life built together can be dismantled. I'm dividing up possessions with the precision of a surgeon. Every item is a memory, good or bad, but I'm past clinging to the past. As for Rick, the guy's toast. Legal troubles up to his eyeballs. And the neighborhood turns into a real-life crime drama set. People can't stop talking about it. I even overhear a couple of kids trading Rick stories like baseball cards. In the middle of this chaos, I'm finding peace. It's like I've walked through a storm and come out the other side. I'm reconnecting with old friends, picking up hobbies I'd forgotten I loved. It's a rediscovery of who I was before Jenna, before Rick, before this whole mess. Jenna moves out, and the house feels different, emptier, sure, but also like a weight's been lifted. I'm turning over a new leaf, rediscovering joys in the little things. Morning coffee tastes better. The sun seems brighter and I'm smiling more. It's not happiness, not yet, but it's a start. I realize that this downfall, it's not just Rick's or Jenna's. It's the end of a chapter in my life too. But every end's a beginning, right? I'm standing at the start of a new path. And for the first time in a long time, I'm excited to see where it leads. So here's the kicker. Jenna's fairy tale turns into a nightmare. Her affair blows up like a firecracker in her face. Rick, he's trading his suburban castle for a jail cell. And me? I'm like a bird that's just been let out of a cage. Free. It's a whole new world, and I'm standing at the threshold, ready to take the leap. I'm not just talking about moving on. I'm talking about a total life overhaul. I've got these new friends, see? Lisa and Mark, they're like my partners in crime, but the good kind. We've bonded over shared experiences, over stories and laughter. They've shown me that life's got so much more to offer when you're not stuck in a toxic loop. We're planning this road trip, something I've never done before. We're talking about hitting the road. No set destination, just the open highway and a world of possibilities. It's like one of those movies, where the hero hits the road to find himself. Only this time it's not a movie, it's my life. And Jenna? She's become a chapter in my old life, a lesson learned. I'm not bitter, I'm just done. I've turned the page on that part of my life. There's no revenge plot, no grand confrontation left. Just a quiet acceptance and a determination to build something new. As I pack up my car, I feel lighter, like I'm shedding a skin that no longer fits. I've got my guitar in the back seat, a bag of clothes and a heart full of hope. Lisa's planning the playlist and Mark's in charge of snacks. It's a motley crew, but man, it feels right. We hit the road, and with each mile I can feel the weight of the past fading away. The open road is therapeutic, like a balm to my soul. We stop at diners, chat with strangers, and watch sunsets that paint the sky in colors I've never seen before. This journey, it's more than just a road trip. It's a journey of self-discovery. I'm learning to laugh again, to take risks, to live in the moment. Lisa and Mark, they're not just friends. They're my lifeline to a world I'd forgotten existed. Night falls and we're sitting around a campfire, sharing stories and dreams. I look up at the stars and it hits me I'm exactly where I need to be. I'm not defined by my past, by Jenna, or by the mess she left behind. I'm my own person with a future as wide and open as the night sky. You won't believe what happens next. Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss the rest of this jaw-dropping saga. Trust me, you're going to want to. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Mark. Before this video starts, I want to let all my viewers know that this story is different than the usual stories I post on this channel. I hope you all are able to learn something valuable from it. The focus of this channel is to spread awareness of infidelity and how it impacts people's lives. Now let's get into today's story to find out what happened. About 25 years ago, I was in the military and was on a 2-year assignment from where my 38-year-old wife and I lived. We had been married about 20 years at that point, so I only came home on the weekends. After the first year, my wife started telling me to just stay there and not come home until my assignment finally ended. I refused and continued coming home on the weekends. She started treating me very coldly and not wanting to be intimate on those weekends. Then after another 3 or 4 months, she started randomly accusing me of cheating on her and continued being cold towards me. When my remote assignment ended, I was given orders overseas for 3 years, so I started preparing to rent out our house and move my wife and teenage sons. My wife constantly fought with me about it by saying she did not want to go and that I should go by myself. Also during this transition, she was still cold and distant. My kids wanted to go, so she finally agreed to go. Once we got to the new location, she started constantly finding fault with everything with me and the location. So after 6 months there, I received permission to move her and my kids back home at the end of the year. The next 6 months were cordial at best. She was still cold but allowed some intimacy about once a week. As the end of the year drew closer, she became excited about moving back and withdrew from me again. She stayed withdrawn from me for the last month or so. I took a 2 weeks leave about a week after she departed with the kids and went back home to help out. After about 3 hours of arriving, she was telling me to just leave and go back to my base. I stayed for about 10 days and returned to my base overseas. I was there for another 2.5 years. I would go home about every 4 months for 10 days and be treated the same way as I was the first time. We would be intimate twice in those 10 days, but I got a feeling she was doing it out of a feeling of obligation rather than desire. Also, she acted as if she wasn't really happy I was there, and even stated she would like it better if I did not come back home until my time overseas was finished. For that remaining 1.5 years, she remained cold and distant when I visited, and whenever I would call her to see if all was okay. If I mentioned I had gone to a cookout or bowling, she would accuse me of cheating and hang up. She would also constantly tell me everything was my fault and was always in her way of doing what she wanted. After I finally got transferred back, the coldness and distance remained. After 6 months back, I moved out. I stayed gone and even told her that if that is the way she was going to be, I wanted a divorce. So, she agreed to marriage counseling. We went, but it was mostly a joke. She blamed her coldness and distance on me for not understanding her and what she wanted. So, I moved back home and just ignored it from then on. I left the military and got a job that required constant traveling. Now 25 years later, we are both in our 60s and retired. I have a lot of time on my hands now and time for self-reflection. Hindsight is almost always 20/20. Now, I question her actions as I look back and analyze them using various articles I have read from people who analyze cheating spouses. My wife's actions back then fit the pattern given by other cheaters, even though I don't have the proof. Over the years since then, some of her friends and previous co-workers have made snide remarks about her possibly cheating during get-togethers while the alcohol flowed. I have mentioned it to her a few times. She never denies what they say but responds by questioning their honesty, or that they were probably doing it themselves. We still have an occasional blowout. A few times I have been so emotionally drained by always being who she lashes out at that I leave for a few hours just to get my composure back. When I come back, I tell her that I will leave if that is what she wants. Then she immediately states that she never cheated on me and has always been faithful. To recap, 25 years ago, my wife exhibited the cheating telltale symptoms listed by many professionals in the marriage counseling field. She pushed her spouse away, became distant, constantly found fault with her spouse, constantly denied cheating even though never accused of it, and constantly accused her remote spouse of cheating. Also, she constantly worked overtime on the weekends at her company even though no one else did except her boss. This occurred for about 3 years. So now to my question or dilemma. We have been married for 45 years now. I am now questioning our entire married years. I can't bury it in the back of my mind anymore. Should I leave this sleeping dog alone? Or should I discuss it all with her and probably tear our marriage apart? A few of her coworkers, also Asian, are still around. They were also her friends. I have to be really careful because they stay in touch on Facebook. So I know a couple of the husbands and will possibly try to talk with them. The 2 oldest kids are already out of the house. The youngest lived in the video game world and never paid much attention to her comings and goings. But I will talk with them for a little. Update. So I tried to reach out to someone and was very careful in what I said. His wife immediately called my wife asking why we were separated and other BS. I am glad I did not actually ask my real questions. So this tells me I can't. I will just confront her directly and try to get her to believe I actually know something and not just suspicion. I need to get my physical living accommodations set up here in the US first. Next update. It has been a while since my original post and short update. I might have posted an update after the ones on the original post. So I confronted her. She denied what happened and kept asking who told me. She then just brushed it off as whoever it was must just be jealous of her. Even after I itemized her behavior back then in detail, she just continued to deny it. Then she started accusing me of not being nice back then, and that I hurt her by not trusting her. She also kept wiping non-existent tears. As soon as I backed off, she just started saying that I had bad communication with her. Since then I tried to get past it and took her on a Caribbean cruise, but I just don't have those loving feelings. At this point I don't wish her any misfortune but just want to leave her. Now my oldest son and his family decided to get ancestry DNA tests. They also told me the wife and I should. So I did, and I had my youngest do it also. Turns out that my oldest son and my youngest son are only half brothers. The DNA test also shows that my oldest son is not my biological son but my youngest is. I never suspected this. My wife was pregnant for about a month before we met. 2.5 months into our relationship she told me she was pregnant. I was 19, so I assumed it was mine. I was quite naive and stupid then. So my upbringing and my infatuation convinced me that I needed to marry her. I ended up raising 2 kids that weren't mine. She had a 4-month-old when we met and one that was. I love the 2 oldest just as much as my youngest. That will never change. I have not told the wife about this yet. I need to discuss it with my oldest son and then all 3 of them. Then I will also inform them that I'm divorcing their mother. The 2 oldest will have to ask her who their biological fathers are because I have no clue. Then I will video chat with her and inform her of everything and my intentions to file. I strongly feel there was an emotional affair and a physical affair that happened 25 to 30 years ago. I most likely will never know for sure. What I do know though is that my oldest son isn't mine. Final update. At the end of my last update I was going to tell my kids the truth and then the wife. I told my kids 5 days ago. It was pretty tough. All of my kids took it pretty well, but I think my oldest son may still be processing it. I do not know if their biological dads are the same individual or 2 different men. So the oldest child will get a DNA test also. I told both of them to ask their mom. Hopefully she will remember and tell them. I decided to just text my wife instead of video chat. After 40+ years I knew that would end badly. I would probably lose my composure and blow up, which wouldn't have helped. Also I am pretty emotional over this. The text was short and to the point. The DNA test showed the oldest child is not mine and is only a half-sibling to the youngest. I stated I did not accept being lied to for 40+ years, that the marriage was over and that I would be filing for divorce. She replied shortly after that. I did not respond to any of her texts. First it was a misunderstanding about her lying to me, and that she did not know. Then it was just us having bad communication. Then she was sorry that I had so much hate for her, and said she would sign the papers and hoped I would find someone that would make me happy. Next she started blaming me for everything and said that I never cared and trusted her. All of her texting was over the span of about 2 days. I texted her that I would only text her regarding the kids, grandkids and the divorce from now on. I included the financial support she will get and how. She asked if I would just send all of her belongings to her. Since then it has been dead silence from her. She has contacted the 2 oldest about everything. I have not done the paperwork yet but will do that shortly. That's all for now. OP. I am almost at a loss for words right now. Out of all the stories I've covered on this channel, this is by far the most heartbreaking story I've read. I honestly believe your wife is a full-blown psychopath. There is no way any sane person could lie to another person's face for over 40 years and not be bothered by it one bit. Your wife even went as far as to gaslight you and make it seem as if you were the problem. I highly recommend that you and your son seek therapy from this traumatic situation. I am so sorry to hear you went through this and hope you are able to recover soon. To all my viewers, I honestly had doubts about sharing this story. However, I realized that it needed to be shared because these kind of things can happen. Be extremely careful with who you marry, and remember to stand up for yourself. This story was heartbreaking to read, but the goal of my channel is to educate my viewers on the realities of infidelities that take place throughout the world, and how to deal with them. I truly do hope OP is able to heal from this situation. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's story. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts on what happened. Hey everyone! Get ready for a shocking story of betrayal and the unexpected fallout. Today's story is called, I Caught My Wife of 9 Years Cheating Behind Walmart. I can't believe I am writing about this, but yep, it's true. I caught my wife of 9 years cheating on me behind Walmart. I had to deal with my wife and a guy I did not know walking hand in hand out of an exit in the back of Walmart. I wish I was kidding. My wife has been staying out until 4 a.m. for the past 3 months or so every single day. She was claiming she was trying to get more overtime. She's younger than me, only by 2 years, but she looks much younger than her age. You can imagine that I was very upset when this happened, though now I am completely fine with it because she is on her way out permanently. I try to tell people about my wife cheating and they just don't believe me, or they offer some BS advice like just give her some space. No one really understands what happens behind closed doors in relationships these days. People just really don't give a crap. It all started when one day my wife said she was coming home from her shift at Walmart. She worked as an assistant manager. Her shift was supposed to end at 7 p.m., but by midnight she wasn't home. I was calling her and texting but no response. So I decided to take a trip to go see if everything was okay. It's about a 20-minute drive or so. This is a 24-hour Walmart, so it wasn't closed. As I pull up to Walmart, I see her car in the parking lot. As I pull into the parking lot, I look at her car, but it looks like no one is in the vehicle. So I parked my car and go inside. I go to her department but I don't see her. I really don't see anyone around. Everyone is scattered. A couple people that work with her acknowledge me and wave. I wave back. I then proceed to the back of Walmart. I figured during her shift she had to go back there for something. So I walk toward the back of Walmart and go to the break room. Still no sign of my wife. I go to another spot where they unload the trucks. No wife there either. As I am walking back toward the front entrance, I see her leaving through one of the exits at the side of Walmart. She has a man with her. She's holding hands with him and they're walking toward his car in the parking lot. My heart is racing but I had to calm down. I don't know why I did it, but I pulled out my phone to start recording. I didn't say a word. I kept my distance. I wanted to see where they were going. They walked to his white SUV. They got in and drove out into the parking lot. He stopped at my wife's vehicle. She got out to get something out of her car. As soon as they left, I ran to my car. I was parked a little far and followed them. The first place they stopped at was a gas station. They both went inside and came back out and kept driving. After the stop at the gas station, I lost them for like 10 minutes or so because traffic blocked me from getting close to where he turned. I got lucky this time. It took me about 15 more minutes to catch up with them again. He then pulled into a hotel parking lot. It's an Econo-Lodge hotel. He pulls into one of the parking spots that is near the hotel lobby. They get out and they walk into the lobby. As I am following them, I was thinking, how long does it take to rent a room? How much time is left on her shift? Well, she was supposed to get off at 7 p.m. At least that's what she told me. And what the hell is he going to do with my wife the whole night? I was freaking out. I followed them close enough so that if they walked anywhere else that I could follow them still. She was talking to him as they walked toward the room. The sign for the hotel says check in at 3 p.m. and check out at 11 a.m. The clock strikes 1:30 a.m. and no one is coming or going from their rooms. There's maybe about 5 people in the lobby itself and all of them are sitting around watching TV. She opens the door and I see that they are both still dressed. She closes the door behind them. I froze at that moment. Should I run in and knock on the door? But I didn't. You know what I did? I sent her a picture and video recording via text of them holding hands, and them holding hands walking into the hotel lobby. After that, I got in my car and drove home, wishing that this had never happened. My wife finally made it home and started asking all these questions. Why did I follow her? I told her, you told me you got off at 7 p.m., but you know what? We don't need to discuss anything. I am filing for divorce. She was in shock right after I said that. She then asked, can we talk? I said, no, there is nothing to talk about. I caught you cheating on me and I have proof of it. You just need to leave. She then says, I don't have anywhere to go. I threw my hands up and said, that's not my problem. If you want to stay here, I will change the locks and lock you out. You can come back in a few days after you find a place. Meanwhile, I am going to sleep because I have been up all night dealing with this. We both go our separate ways. She goes into the guest bedroom, closes the door behind her. I go to our bedroom to get some rest. I get up at about 4 p.m., walk out to the living room and notice the door to the guest bedroom is open. I walk up and peek in, she's gone. I then walk back to my bedroom and notice that most of her clothes are gone. I look out the window of our apartment and her car is gone. I am thinking to myself, she must have come in while I was sleeping. At that moment, I proceeded to call a couple of lawyers to see about divorce procedures here in Virginia. I was going to file for divorce today. Called one lawyer. He kind of gave me some bad news. He said that we had to have lived apart from each other for at least 1 year for a no-fault divorce. He then asked, have I been apart from her for at least a year? I said no. He said I could still file for divorce, but it will be a long process and could get expensive. I asked the attorney, what about a separation agreement? He then tells me the state doesn't have separation agreement laws per se. The only option is no-fault divorce or fault. At this point, after talking to the attorney, the only option I really had was to file for divorce. However, the wife was not home to sign for service of process. So I had no choice but to file in court to have her served. A few minutes later, my wife called and asked, can she come back home? I said, you can, but I am filing for divorce still. My mind hasn't changed. She then tells me she has nowhere to go. At that point, I didn't care, but I didn't have the resources to file for divorce yet. I then tell her you can have the guest bedroom until this is all sorted out. A few weeks go by and I go to my attorney's office and file for the divorce. I then call my wife and tell her that I have filed for the divorce. She asked if we are going to work on fixing things. I told her that wasn't an option anymore. After everything that has been done, no forgiveness or giving another chance would be given. You betrayed me and I just can't deal with the fact you cheated right in front of my face. I will not be able to get that image out of my head for a long time. And I don't know why you would do that because we were married and you took vows to be loyal to me. I wanted to fix everything, but after this it was just too much for me. She then started crying and apologizing, saying that she could not live without me in her life. I told her at this point she can't have us back. You killed any chance for that with this loser you cheated on me with. She then starts to yell at me saying, what am I supposed to do? I said, did he open your eyes and promise you a better life? Well, you can now pursue that so-called better life. I would rather be alone than spend time with you after what you did. I told her you have the guest bedroom to lay your head until you find a place of your own. She then says, I can't find a place. I then tell her you have your parents or the guy you cheated on me with, or save your money so you can get a place of your own. She then goes on about the guy she cheated with, saying I don't talk to him anymore. She then started crying hysterically, asking me why am I doing this to her? She never thought I was going to do anything like this. I said, listen, you did this to yourself by cheating on me. This is the consequence. You made your bed, now you can lay in it. The phone call ends with us yelling at each other. I get home after my visit with the attorney. My wife's car is in one of our parking spots. I come in and notice her sitting on the couch on the phone talking to someone. She then hangs up and looks at me and says, can we talk? I said, what? We just got through yelling at each other. What's there to talk about? The divorce is in the works and we both will be free soon enough. She then asked, could we try marriage counseling? I looked at her and said, no, I don't need counseling. You might need it. I tell her you cheated and no marriage counselor will make that go away. I told her to stop talking to me as I wasn't in the mood to talk to her. She was officially past tense in my book. Even though the divorce wasn't final, I was done, mentally checked out. She starts crying and goes to the guest bedroom. I meanwhile go to my bedroom and put my work bag on the bed. I come back out to the couch to gather my thoughts. I am still heartbroken over this, but the good thing is I can move on with my life. I don't have any kids with this woman or any commingled debts. I was almost going to surprise her with the anniversary gift to the Bahamas, but glad I don't have to spend money for that. I am trying to figure out what I did for her to throw away 9 years of marriage for a roll in the hay for a loser. This guy still lives with her parents. Amazing. This divorce can't happen fast enough. I just want to move on with my life. Thank you for watching and listening to the video. Remember, if you enjoyed the content, please like, comment, and consider subscribing so that I may continue to bring you greetings, viewers. Today we have an unbelievable story that will shock you to your core. Prepare to be captivated as we unravel the truth behind a wife's secret life. Let's dive in. It's hard to recognize my life looking back on it. I'd always thought it would be a normal small town dream: wife, 2 kids, dog, and a little house. And I was well on my way to securing that little slice of Americana for myself. But despite being the best contractor in the county, the life I'd built came tumbling down one day when I found out what my wife's extra shifts really were. I'd always been proud of my wife long before the pandemic brought everything to a screeching halt. I known the work that being in the healthcare field was like running a perpetual gauntlet, one covered in someone else's vomit. Melissa spent long hours taking care of elderly dementia patients in a nursing home as a CNA early in her career, coming home in tears at the state of the facility and the lack of help. Then when she became an RN, she was able to move on to greener pastures. First stop, our local emergency room. Despite her small frame and bubbly demeanor, my wife had always been one hell of a daredevil. She loved the heart-bursting adrenaline of roller coasters, and she drove far faster than even I dare to. That made her a great fit for the ER, where you had to know how to handle your adrenaline and still act Finally, her career landed her on the nursing career version of free parking. She became a flight nurse. For the first few months, her social media was full of posts showing her next to the helicopter in her full gear, looking tiny next to the man who she said was a pilot. She informed me it got a lot of attention from our friends. Social media was never my thing, so I took her at her word. As for me, I'd never done anything much. Melissa was my greatest accomplishment in life. Just like her, I'd headed off to college just after graduation. Unlike her, I'd been more interested in making things than helping people. A career as an engineer was what I'd been pursuing when I met her. Within 2 months, we were engaged and planning our life together, and my studies simply gave way to her own. Her job saved lives. After all, my career path wasn't anything quite so noble, so I fell back on my high school job, working construction in a business owned by a friend's father. The money wasn't much, but it was enough to keep us alive while Melissa finished her education. Even when she was working while at college, it was a pittance. My paycheck and sweat ensured she ate, got to class, and had a roof over her head. She said one day, through tears, as I surprised her with the money, she'd been short to cover her books one semester. I told her, "You will make it through, I promise." Then I kissed her on the forehead. She didn't need to know. I skipped lunch every day for the last 2 months to scrounge the money up. By the time she made it to the big leagues of nursing, life wasn't quite so unsteady. We'd made it through the hard part. Now she was practically raking in the money. For the first time in our lives, it felt like we could relax and enjoy ourselves a little. I started taking more holidays off, hosting more barbecues for our friends, even went to an NFL game once or twice. And her girls' night out, girls' night in, spa days, she was gorgeous. With as much time and cash as she spent at the salon and the mall, you'd hope so. But why should I care? She was bringing home the dough, and I was reaping the rewards. There was a downside though. I began to feel lonely. With all of her time at work, and all of the time she spent focusing on herself, she had hardly any time left for me. Of course, she deserved pampering. After all of those hours being selfless, helping her patients in every place she worked, but it didn't make the feeling any better. I loved my wife and wanted her desperately every minute of every day. And I couldn't seem to get her to sit still long enough to let me show her how much I adored her. Finally, I knew what needed to be done, knew exactly what would really catch her eye. Being young and paying for our own wedding, a honeymoon hadn't been a possibility. It had saddened Melissa to no end, and no groom likes to see his bride looking down on her wedding day. So, I made a promise to her that one day I'd take her wherever she wanted to go in the entire world. Whatever she wanted, I'd make it happen. And I had always intended to keep that promise. For our 5th anniversary, I kept that promise. I'm not too manly to say the week wasn't magical. Spending 7 days with the most beautiful woman in the world, seeing her body bronze in the sun, and become dewy against the sheets. It's something anyone would be over and she was as happy about it as I was. The glow in her eyes told the whole story. Felt like we were brought out of stasis. We'd entered upon saying I do, and that we were newlyweds all over again. There was no getting enough of each other. We made love for hours every night, every day. Even today, I don't think the memory of that vacation will ever leave me. Now much more bitter than before. It's still something I'd enjoyed so long. I know it would never leave me. When we got home, I carried my wife, still as beautiful as the day I married her, over the threshold. It was the first time I'd felt good enough about myself as a husband to do so. How could things have gone so badly wrong? The first thing that dented this haven we created was while other couples were stuck at home together, whether fighting or, well, I was stuck at home by myself. Melissa seemed to be working constantly. When she came home, she'd have indentures from the PPA on her skin. I tried to kiss her, rub the marks to make the pain from them go away, but she'd usually push me aside. I understood. I really did. She was working an exhausting schedule, and trying to fight a battle against an enemy that she couldn't even see. What kind of jackass husband would put sex above something like that? So I focused my love on being accepting of her, and of doing my best to support her in any way I could. She'd come home to a hot meal and a strong drink. No matter what time it was when she returned whatever she wanted, I had it before she could get the sentence out. Her feet hurt. No worries, babe. I'll carry you to the tub so you can soak. And I didn't ask anything in return. Showing love to healthcare workers wasn't just a social movement to me. It was something I was throwing myself into with the woman I loved as the recipient. But even as things seemed to be slowing down, she started staying away more and more. I don't want you to catch COVID, she told me one day, after she spent a full week in a hotel room near her workplace. Your family's health history isn't great. Your grandma's got emphysema, and you're the only one that can go out and about without possibly spreading it. She promised me things will be back to normal and we will possibly go away again. I wouldn't realize until hours later that neither of us had said I love you, Not once in the entire conversation. It made me feel like a failure of a husband. After all, she was my wife, my life, and I loved her dearly. But something inside me didn't sit right. That night, I hardly slept, even as I tried to drown that feeling in my gut in cheap beer. Not long after that hit, I got another one. I lost my job. The owner felt horrible as he'd known me since I was a kid. "We're letting everyone go for now," he said, "everyone but me and the family. It's all I can afford. And I don't know how much longer that'll last. As soon as everything's back to normal, I will hire you again. And if you find some other job in between and you don't want to leave it, you will get no hard feelings from me. If you come back, I'll make it up to you. I'll give you a promotion and a raise. But for now, I gotta let you go." I took my marching papers along with a glowing reference and a promise not to fight unemployment and came home early to an empty house and an absent wife. This was the time when the loneliness was the worst. I called and called, trying to get a hold of her somehow, if for nothing but our budget. She had to know that I just lost the only job I'd ever had, and the income that had helped her rise to where she was today. The phone would ring and ring and ring, but I never got an answer. I must have texted her dozens of times, nothing. But I assumed she was busy with work, and there was nothing more noble than working extra shifts at a hospital during a pandemic. Finally, 2 days after getting the axe, she answered. The sympathy I expected, it was clear I wouldn't find it with her. "Why? How could you let this happen?" she said, sounding angrier than I'd ever heard her before. She berated me, told me that she had no intention of supporting a spouse who didn't work. It was an ugly side I've never seen of her before. This was North Carolina, and we'd both gotten a heaping dose of old-fashioned values just from living in the place, but I'd always thought of her as my partner in life. And my partner had just left me feeling alone, uncared for, and disgusted. After that, the next weeks were a blur. I'm not proud to admit that I spent most of the time drunk. Doing anything else felt like moving a mountain. I just wanted to wilt, to wallow in the sorrow that my happy life and marriage had become. Melissa and I didn't talk much. I only saw her once a week, sometimes less. We slept together once. She did seem nicer, more caring, even apologizing for her outburst. But that feeling in the pit of my stomach was back, and it wasn't leaving. During one of our phone calls, when she answered, I could have sworn I heard a man's voice. It was low, a bit gruff, and I couldn't make out what he'd been cut off from saying. The tone, though, unmistakable. Asking Melissa about it made her laugh. She said, "You just heard the TV. I'm catching up on some shows. I haven't had a chance to watch in a while." Then I asked, "Why did it stop?" "Because I paused it to talk to you." She stopped for a moment. "What are you trying to say?" Suddenly feeling foolish, I didn't tell the truth. I brushed the question off and tried to talk to her as though nothing was wrong. Something was wrong, though. Very wrong. I'd hear her answer the phone out of breath. It would be because she just hurried back to the hotel to rest her feet. But never again did I hear that voice over the phone, at least. One day, when I had run out of beer to drink and pity to consume me, I decided something had to change. I knew my wife was off work. Now COVID be damned. I was going to pick up flowers, put on something that wasn't 3 days worn, and I was going to go see my wife. She'll be so surprised. I thought I had no idea how right that would be and how wrong at the same time. I had always known where she was staying while she didn't like me to visit, and had told me of her own accord. I put my foot down. I was going to know where my wife was spending her nights. If only so I know where she was. If something happened, they were across town, close to the hospital she worked out of. It's why she said she had chosen them. At the front desk, I stopped. A woman was working there, red-headed, a bit slim, but with green eyes that struck me for a moment, feeling a moment of disgust with myself. I smiled in a friendly way. It took some smooth talking, but I got a key card for her room. Her booking with my credit card helped with that. That was exactly what I wanted. I didn't want her to have the chance to turn me away. Here I was dressed in my Sunday best and carrying a bouquet of lilies, her favorite flower, and a bottle of rose wine, her favorite drink. I was ready for a special night. I walked into a nightmare. Upon opening the door, I didn't really comprehend what it was at first. The lights were on and I saw the bed unmade. Then I saw skin. Then I saw red. I was stunned, which is lucky, I suppose. Otherwise, I might be in prison now, but it was clear what was happening. My wife, my Melissa, being intimate with another man. I felt ill. I felt something beyond anger. By now she noticed me. She was shrieking, yelling about something, then sobbing. The man was putting clothes on. It was such a blur. Somehow I ended up in the foyer of the hotel, sobbing, heartbroken, and barely conscious with grief over my lost marriage. It was the receptionist that had given me the key that finally helped. A hand was rubbing my back. That contact had more intimacy than anything Melissa had given me in months. My thoughts began to cool. I began to calm down. "You seem like a good man," she was saying. You don't deserve someone like her. Don't let her do this to you. It's going to be all right. I asked her what she meant and the truth came out. My wife hadn't been working so many extra shifts. In fact, she'd worked little more than I had. A steady 40-hour work week. All that time, she had been sleeping with other men. The receptionist hadn't kept careful track, but knew it was more than one. I didn't go home. I went to my friend's house, the one whose father had given me my job. He drank with me and let me crash on his couch until I felt like coming home. That took 2 days. There was one stop made between his house and mine. As it turned out, she was there trying to explain, wanting to save our marriage after putting nothing towards it, then shattering it with her infidelity. I didn't want that. How could I? I'd never see her as my Melissa again. She couldn't be my wife anymore. Not after what I'd seen, but I decided to get the truth out of her and I could use this to do it. Tell me, I said, my voice so grave I could hardly recognize it. Tell me how many, and don't lie and say that was the only one. Eyes watery. She looked down, ashamed, I supposed, at her behavior. Oddly, I found that I didn't care about it. I was completely detached. 3. She told me the whole story, skipping no details. At every point in her career, she found somebody to screw behind my back while I was slaving away in the summer sun. She was studying with the fellow nursing student while in school. She didn't pull extra shifts at the nursing home. A cook there had caught her eye. There was nobody after our trip. She said fervently, nobody, just you until the man she'd been caught with, the pilot she worked with. Of course, suddenly she was wiping her face. Please forgive me. I'm so sorry. She repeated in stuttering litany. Look, I got you something. It's tickets for that Hawaii vacation. And I interrupted her. I got you something too. A look of fear came over her face. Melissa didn't answer. The only reply I had was handing out a packet of divorce papers. The divorce wasn't terribly lengthy, for about a month or so. It seemed like Melissa was going to push to stay together. I'd heard that her pilot had gotten into trouble with his own wife for sleeping with mine. She decided to stay, but he was to have nothing with Melissa, with the other lovers long in the rearview mirror that left her alone as I'd been. I wasn't alone anymore. I was living my life and getting on with it. Work hadn't hired me back, but I'd been building my reputation as a contractor. The pay was small as of now, but quickly growing. My buddy didn't mind me staying in his garage apartment until I found something a bit better. Best of all, I'd gotten a pretty redhead's number from the hotel. Her name is Jean. We've had dinner 3 times now. I've never had to call her back more than twice. As for Melissa, there's something we both learned about our state law. When adultery is the cause of the divorce, it can be used to determine certain aspects of the split. Things like alimony. The judge was horrified by Melissa's behavior and took into account everything I'd done to help her and how my now ex had betrayed me. That account turned out to mean a rather hefty sum of alimony every month for a very, very long time. The first night after the divorce was complete, Jean and I made love. After all, I'm not a cheater and she's not looking for any extra shifts. If you enjoyed this story, please like, comment, and subscribe for more.